I think I met my mother's doppelganger last night. Last night was by far the most terrifying night I've ever been through. I've read stories about doppelgangers before, but honestly I thought they were just that, stories. Now, I'm a firm believer that there is a supernatural double of ourselves out there, and last night, I think I met my mom's. I live alone out in the country here in central Michigan. I've lived within a 20-mile radius of my current home my whole life. My nearest neighbor is 2 miles down the road, and my mom lives about 10 miles away. My dad passed away 3 years ago, and it's just my mom and me left in the area. All of our relatives live in Florida, so naturally, my mom and me are fairly close. I visit her a minimum of 2 times a week. It's always at her house. She's only been to my house maybe 3 times in the 2 years I've lived here. Last night I was home alone as usual, watching my favorite show, 72 Most Dangerous Animals, when I decided it was getting late and I needed to get ready for bed. It was around 10:30 p.m. when I turned the TV off and brushed my teeth. While I was in the bathroom, I thought I heard my screen door open out in the living room. I live in a single-wide trailer, so it's pretty easy to hear the front screen door from my bathroom. I turned the sink off and listened a little closer. After a few seconds of silence, I thought that maybe it was just the wind. Just as I was about to turn the sink back on, I heard yet another noise. "Brett." A soft voice called from the front door. I could tell right away it was my mother. I was just confused as to why she'd be at my door when she almost never stops over, let alone this time of night. She's normally in bed at like 8 p.m. "Ma?" I called back. I waited and listened, but she never answered back. I decided to just go to the door and see what was wrong, or why she'd be here so late. As I walked down the hall towards my front door, I couldn't shake this feeling of unease. I chalked it up to the house being so quiet and being so far out in the country alone. As I approached the front door, the feeling of unease was now a full-on feeling of dread. I was literally sweating bullets and was shaking in fear. Something was wrong and I knew it. With shaky arms, I grabbed the doorknob, ready to open the door. I stopped in middle of turning the handle and decided to look out the window on my door first. Something I'm so thankful I did. I don't think I'd be here right now if it'd just opened the door without checking first. As soon as I looked out the window, I saw my mother standing on my little porch, smiling happily. I had this, "what the hell?" thought run through my mind as my mother stood on the other side of the door. As soon as I was about to open the door, her head shot up and looked directly at me, which startled me a little. I had the porch light on and all of my lights were off inside, so there's no possible way she could have known I was there. Then right in front of my eyes, she did something that made my skin crawl. Her bottom jaw dropped, as if it became unhinged completely. "Brett." Her soft voice called out in the exact same tone as before. Now this wouldn't be too weird if it weren't for the fact that her lips or jaw didn't move whatsoever. Her bottom jaw just hung open loosely as she called my name. As soon as she said my name, her jaw slammed shut with an audible crack. I stood in complete shock, questioning myself if I really just saw what I think I did. I stood completely still as I watched my mom stand motionless, waiting patiently for me to open the door. After a few seconds of standing there watching this imposter, my phone rang loudly from in my bedroom. I quickly ducked from the window, afraid she'd react to the noise and afraid of what I might see. While still crouched down, I quickly ran to my bedroom to see who was calling. Once in my room, I grabbed my phone, checking the caller ID. "Mom calling." I looked at my phone for a second, afraid of answering it. After a few seconds, I decided to risk it and swiped the answer button. "Brett, is everything okay?" My mother sounded like she was in tears. "Mom, where are you?" I asked, panting from fear. "I'm home, dear. I had this horrible dream and it felt so real. I had to call and make sure you're okay." She was now sobbing loudly. My skin tingled and a cold shiver ran down my spine. My mother was home, not at my front door. "Mom, what was your dream?" I said with a shaky voice. "That something was posing as me trying to get you to answer your door, and when you did it it was just awful what it did to you." She was still sobbing. I stood in complete shock. Whatever my mom had dreamt about was literally standing at my front door. Her dream confirmed it. If I answered that door, something terrible would happen to me. That explained the feeling of dread that washed over me as soon as I approached the door. Tap, tap, tap. tapping at my bedroom window caused me to yelp and spin around to face it. My heart slammed in my chest so hard I swear my vision started to get fuzzy. Brett. That same voice rang out. Her jaw was hung loosely open before quickly snapping shut, that same smile returning instantly. She had her face pressed up to the window, her breath fogging up the glass. I stared in horror as this replica of my mom stared right at me, separated by just the window. I could feel the evil radiating from her. She gave off this malicious vibe that made the hair on my arms and neck stand on end. Brett, are you okay? I heard my real mom shout from the speaker on my phone, which was laying at my feet. Help. I barely managed to squeak. It must have been loud enough for my mom to hear, though, as she quickly shouted back, I'm calling the police now. The dial tone followed shortly after as she hung up, leaving me alone with this thing. The face at the window changed from a happy smile to a huge, exaggerated frown. The skin drooped and sagged at an impossible level of stretchiness. She gave me one final glare before disappearing from the window. The sound of twigs snapping and thuds from footsteps could be heard as she disappeared further into the woods behind my house, before it eventually faded away altogether. I stood in shock and fear for a few minutes until eventually the sound of distant sirens could be heard approaching. I cannot describe to you the level of relief that came over me when I heard them pull into my driveway. I ran to the front door and yanked it open. Tears rolled from my eyes. The next hour or so the police questioned me, and I told them there was someone stalking my house. They had footprints as evidence all around my trailer in the snow. They eventually lost track of them, as apparently they just disappeared a ways in the woods. Even the canines lost track of the intruder. I decided to stay the night at my mom's house, and I honestly think I'll be staying here for a little while. I'm too afraid to go back home. My mom doesn't even want me to leave her site to go to work. I don't want to either. I don't know what that was, but I fully believe in the paranormal now.